Kurt, this week in PBT Extra, it's playoffs. Every day is one of the most exciting days of my existence. I'm like, oh, edge of my seat. Let's talk about Memphis. 124-96. They beat Minnesota handily. What did you take away from that game?
What a comeback. Like, what a turnaround. I'm going to start in a different place. Jenkins, the coach, who we talked about as coach of the year possibility. Steven Adams gets in foul trouble early, right? And it's not a good matchup for him. This is just not the best series matchup. And part of being a good playoff coach and being a winning playoff coach, whether you're Popovich or Spoelstra or going back to Pat Riley and whoever, playoffs are about matchups. The best coaches become ruthless about it, right? He did. He pulled 3 minutes in, got that technical and everything. Steven Adams is out. We don't see him again all game. And Jenkins talks to him after the game like, dude, I'm sorry to do this. And Adams was cool with it. He went to the matchups that worked. And then with Adams out and them able to space the floor a little more, suddenly they were in the paint all game, right? Like they were just driving downhill. They were getting getting Towns in some foul trouble, but also just they were able to get into the paint. And I think they had 50-something points in the paint in that game, 53, 54. When they're getting downhill like that, they're just tough to stop. They just looked like the Grizzlies again to me. What about you? What did you see?
I love how you led with Jenkins and not Ja. You know, how many people out there are thinking, oh, Memphis, Ja Morant? And I think that's a really interesting point that we need to mention. Obviously, Ja Morant still did Ja Morant caliber play, which is almost a triple-double, like 23, 9, 10. So it's almost like a quiet night. Oh, yeah, like almost a triple-double. But the important thing that you hit it, matchups. And this is one of the most interesting things about the playoffs in my mind. I was just doing some research, Kurt. You know, I love going through the archives. And I pulled up Bill Russell's Library of Congress interview. And he was talking about when he was in broadcasting, how does he think about playoffs? And this is a guy who won 11 championships in 13 years, right? So, like, out of anyone, he's the authority on how to win in the playoffs. And that's the first thing he always says is matchups, right? And then every game is completely different. Game 1 versus game 2, everyone's making adjustments. The coaches that can make the adjustments quicker than the other coaches will win the series. So to see that we go straight to Jenkins, I love how you and Bill Russell are thinking on the same level right there. That was pretty impressive.
I'm impressed that you put me and him anywhere near the same category in anything. He's a really great basketball mind, obviously, but I think that's always been true. And I think it's also the advantage that Jenkins has in this series that Lord knows Bill Russell had with those Celtics when they were winning. You have to have the player versatility to make the changes, right? They had places to go. Like, oh, no, we've been using our role players all season. They're ready to step into this moment and make an adjustment. And we'll see. Like, it wasn't a great D'Angelo Russell game where he's got to bounce back better, right? Like, where does Chris Finch, who's been a really good coach for them this year, where does he go to make his adjustments now?
Yeah, D'Angelo Russell numbers there, 3 for 11 from the floor, walked away with 11 points. So, yeah, not the best night there. Karl-Anthony Towns, only 15 points. Anthony Edwards kind of basically shouldering the load there with 20 points. But it is interesting when you're talking about the idea of player versatility because one of the things that jumped to my mind is Adam Silver's comments recently about, the stars not playing in enough games. I think we just go to Kawhi Leonard to kind of see that he's one of the best players in the NBA. And I haven't, obviously due to injuries, we haven't really seen him very much. But it is really interesting to me because what that does is it creates opportunities for you to give guys like Dylan Brooks like run. It's your team now. Ja's not playing. And I was in San Antonio watching the Grizzlies play without Ja. And to see those guys step in and Jaren Jackson take ownership and especially Dylan Brooks take ownership, that to me I think is a really positive thing of the Stars not playing as much. Because when you get into the playoffs and you're looking at a best-of-7 game series, other guys have to step up. And that's why a guy like Jordan Poole can step in. He's like, I've been doing this all season. I have like 20, 30 reps. It's almost like shadowing. And I think it's funny because we don't necessarily think you're a professional basketball player, one of the best in the world. There's only like 450 y'all. But like there are opportunities. Not everyone gets to be a one. And it matters when the one is taken out for whatever reason. Draw your attention to the playing game. Karl-Anthony Towns, he was taken out due to foul trouble, wasn't playing well. Then what happens? Anthony Edwards has to step up or someone has to step up. And in those moments, that's when the shadow and getting 20 or 30 games as the 1 or number 2 option when that's not normally your role, I think is a very positive thing for the player versatility.
Yeah, exactly. I think that sums up the Grizzlies this year, right? I mean, this season, right? What did they end up like? 20-2 or whatever it was when John Morant was out. They dropped a couple meaningless ones at the end, but like their guys stepped up into those roles. And then, hey, game 2, we're gonna radically shift kind of how we've played even the first game of this series, and they were okay with it. They could step right in. That is the sign of a well-coached team to me.
Series tied 1-1 there. Now it's time to go to a series that I don't know if it's going to be back and forth. I don't really know. Golden State, Denver. Yeah. It seems like with Steph Curry, we saw a spark of it, and the entire league was just like, it might be back to the old days, which is great for Golden State fans. Everyone else is kind of lamenting or beginning their period of mourning. What did you take away from that performance?
Corey, are you saying now you think Curry should be a sixth man full time?
No. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I love that Coach Malone's comments after the game. He's the best sixth man, the greatest sixth man ever in the history of the game.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be. I think Jordan Poole's going to have to adjust that role again eventually. But Jordan Poole, like you talked about it, asked to do it all season long and stepped up. And from Denver's perspective, I know that, it's funny, there were a lot of people on Twitter who came in after the first game even were like, so that's your MVP? That's your pick? And I'm like, yeah, he got them to 48 wins. Did you see what that roster, like they're just kind of overmatched, especially in the backcourt without Jamal Murray and without Michael Porter Jr. And I'm not sure how long this series is going to last because the troubling signs were there, the frustration fouls from Jokic and the frustration ejection, frankly, when they were down. I mean, they were down 20. It wasn't going to change anything. But that, you've got squabbling on the bench between, Will Barton and Boogie. Those are the signs of a team kind of coming apart at the seams. And that worries me. I mean, maybe they can get one at home and this is a gentleman's sweep, but doesn't it feel like Golden State's just in control?
Yeah, I mean, coming into this series, I understand Jokic was playing at, a sublime level. But to me, this was Golden State all along, just because one of the issues when you have spectacular play by one individual that's booing an entire team is that, I mean, just think about it, like there's so much stress on one point. Like that's not a healthy system. Like at some point it's going to break down somewhere along the chain. It's just there's too much stress concentrated there. It's like the pipe will burst kind of thing. And you're mentioning that you're starting to see the smoke and steam come up from different areas of the pipe, looking at, all outside of just basketball. But if you just focus on basketball, this is like the thing I love about basketball. It's a team game. And a player of Jokic's caliber, who might win back-to-back MVPs, can't will his team to the second round against Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole, like a team that is playing really well. And in that instance, teams win championships over players. So I think in this scenario, we're seeing this play out, and it must be frustrating. Could you imagine playing at that clip and saying, what more can I do? Yeah. And the answer is nothing. Yeah. There's nothing else that you can do, and it still doesn't get you out of the first round. And that must be very frustrating for Denver fans, which is why the absence of Porter Jr. and Murray has been like highlighted all season long. And I know it's kind of boring because we talk about it for months, but it's a team game. So 1 out of 3 stars, you're missing 2 bullets there. What are you going to do? Yeah.
And in the playoffs against good teams, they're going to be able to take away or at least limit. Nobody's stopping Jokic. I mean, he's still going to get a double-double. But you can turn him from MVP level guy into something else. And who else is going to step up? Who else, the best teams, there is that second option. And frankly, in the playoffs, you're going to need your third and your fourth option to make plays. And Denver just doesn't have that right now. I don't think they go into this offseason panicked, but I think they've realized how much they need not only their guys healthy, but depth. And it would be interesting to see what moves they end up making.
Yeah, but once again, it's like there's no need to make a move completely in a panic, understanding that 2 of your most important players are injured. It's like that would be, in my mind, an unwise thing to do. Would be an overcorrection, an overreaction. Yeah. So it is interesting to see with all the the noise around that organization, will Denver be able to say, look, we're going to keep it steady? Because they've been able to do that. Through all the noise in the past years, they've said we're going to build around this the right way, the traditional way. And they've managed to put those pieces together and develop Jokic into almost a back-to-back MVP. That's elite. Like there's only 12 players in NBA history, and some of those names are like Kareem and Larry Bird. so it's like pretty crazy. So like for them to be able to shepherd that ship, very promising. So it's hard to kind of put any stock on that decision, Kurt.
Yep, and we'll see how good. Look, Golden State. I think what's important, confidence, right? They're believing this now. They're bringing this in. Because it obviously gets tougher next round. It gets tougher as you go along and deeper into this and eventually probably go up against the Suns or whoever. But we talked about this before, even before the playoffs started. The theory of Golden State, peak Golden State, which we hadn't seen, was always the biggest threat to the Suns. And suddenly you're like, hey, maybe we're going to see peak Golden State. So if they can roll that confidence forward, I think that's huge for them, Corey.
What is the I love that, the theory of Golden State? What is the premise, the underlying like what is the essence of Golden State? Well, I got to ask you, Kurt, what is the essence of Utah? That is a question we may not know. We don't know what peak Utah looks like. And right now, Dallas, led by Jalen Brunson, talking about a 40-point game, like 41-point game, led them to even the series 1-1. And guess what? Luka's coming back soon. We don't know when. The average calf strain injury, you're out for 16 days. He's getting awfully close to that marker. What are you hearing? What do you expect from that series?
Yeah, he's getting close. I think that win in game 2 gives them a little – if they had lost game 2, there would be real pressure, right? Going home, you're like, you got to – all right, now we got to make this happen. Now, or going to Utah, I should say, there'd be real pressure. Now, I think the pressure shifts a little bit, and I don't know if we'll see him in game 3 or game 4 or whatever. Look, it's the playoffs. Everybody's tight-lipped about everything, right? It's the NHL. He's got a lower leg injury. Nobody's really talking, but they can afford to be a little more patient. They can afford to be a little more calm, and because they know that they've got the best player in this series still to come back and make plays. So it'll be interesting. I think the pressure on Utah now is, do they have to win both? They have to win the next 2 at home, don't they?
Look, if I was Utah, I'd be winning as many games as Luka-less. I'd be like, look, it's like the buffet. I'm going to get an extra plate of Luka-less Dallas. Like, this is the time to take advantage of it. And we mentioned that, playoff, this is a team game, basketball.
Yeah.
The fact that the Mavs stole one, and that's the correct word, stole one, then it's one of those, it's like we're buying time. And it's almost like when you're an investor, if you have a long time horizon, you can actually weather some storms. You can weather recession, you can weather so that's one thing I love about Dallas is they're buying themselves a couple more days. And when we're talking about when Luka comes back, that to me is huge for Dallas. And Utah needs to just cut it out quick, because the more confidence that Dallas gets that there's hope around the horizon, like, anything that's alive has hope. So you don't let them live very long. So that's, if I was Utah, let's just cut it off. Let's move on.
And that's been the concern with Utah. When we've talked about this before. When things started to go wrong, when adversity hit, and now it's hit, how do they react as a team? Because it hasn't always been great. They haven't always kind of risen above that challenge, and they've obviously, there's enormous pressure on them going into these playoffs with new ownership, Danny Ainge now in charge, and this sense that if they're out in the first round, there is a genuine sense around the league, things are going to get blown up. How blown up is up for debate, but it is not going to be the same Utah team. If you feel that pressure and it weighs on you on the court and you feel like I can't make mistakes, I've got to make these plays, that doesn't bode well. And I'm wondering if they're going to get in their own heads again now, or can they rally? Like you said, as long as Luka's out, they can rack up some wins, they get a chance. This is another team where the theory of this team though has been so much better than the product on the court this season.
Which is, yeah, and I think the italicized part there is this season, because you think about Utah historically, the past couple seasons, one of the best teams. Quinn Snyder done a fantastic job, and like you said, they have an owner that's willing, it looks like, to get involved, be involved, and spend. And it's like, so you're going down the list, you're like, man, you got great coaching, you got everyone who understands their role. Jordan Clarkson's embracing that 6-man role. The departure of Joe Ingles was a little like, I remember when I saw that, I was like, You know, like it actually took me back a little bit because I was like, wasn't he an integral part of that team, like culture? And so it is really interesting to me to see how they're kind of working around the edges, like understanding, look, we're willing to take some pieces off that were kind of essential to what made us tick, you know, as the three and D team, you know, with Gobert rolling to the rim. We're willing to kind of mess around with that if it's going to get us over the hump. Now, like you said, how far are they willing to go before they say, let's just blow it all up? That's going to be an interesting question, considering that Gobert is always finishing in the top 3 for Defensive Player of the Year. You know, Donovan Mitchell is continuing to put up games that you know, that spells superstar. So at a certain point, and then Jordan Clarkson's, like, in my mind, always in the conversation for 6th Man of the Year. Plus that coaching, plus the ownership, at a certain point, you're thinking, okay, win. And that I hope that they don't feel the pressure to, you know, to blow it up sooner rather than later instead of sticking through it.
It'll be interesting. It was no accident that pretty much the entire Knicks front office and Julius Randle were courtside at series game 1 of this series. I'll just say I've heard them. Everybody's heard them. There's more than just smoke behind Donovan Mitchell, the New York rumors. They really like Jalen Brunson as a potential free agent, which Jalen Brunson's price just went up, dude. 41 points of up, didn't it? Yeah. I don't know that the Knicks can get either of them, frankly, but I think the signs with things potentially happening in Utah, like the Knicks showing up to watch that, is a sign of what everybody else is thinking around the league.
Philadelphia 76ers are playing against the Toronto Raptors right now. It's one of the issues that has been difficult for Toronto to handle is the physicality. Kurt, what's your take on this?
Yeah, as one of the people who said, I remember a week ago when I was saying Toronto was a dark horse and watch out for them, and I like them to win this series. Not so much. Philly has done I said Joel Embiid's got to be a monster in this series. Yeah, he has been. He has been the best player on the floor, bar none. They don't really have good answers for him with Toronto. He's been MVP level brilliant. I mean, he's been so good in this series. But I thought of a lot of things I thought Toronto could do. They haven't. They haven't gotten out and run. They haven't gotten the pace up in this series. And I thought Fred VanVleet could at least keep Tyrese Maxey sort of in check, and that just has not been the case. Tyrese Maxey has been brilliant. James Harden has put up numbers. He hasn't been overwhelming, but he continues to put up numbers against long-rangey defenders. But it is mostly Maxey winning against VanVleet has just been huge for this series, and Philadelphia looks in complete control. They go north of the border now. No Matisse Thybulle in those 2 games. Thybulle played 10 minutes last game. Like, he was not an integral part of what they did, and they still steamrolled the Raptors. So it's concerning for Toronto, who now, you know, we'll see what Scotty Barnes is, but I can't imagine he's back, or is certainly not making the same impact after that. That was a nasty ankle roll, Corey.
Yeah, the final score of that game you mentioned, 112-97. So you think, okay, well, Thybulle only played 10 games, and one of the best defenders on that team, right? And you think, okay, wait a second. James Harden isn't playing at the level, like you said, overwhelming, and yet Philadelphia is up 2-0, and it seems to be in complete control moving in the series. It's almost like this is the place every team wants to be in, right? Like, where your first round playoff, and you have a little bit of space to kind of work with it and get better and better as you improve, hoping to peak later in the journey to the finals.
Yeah, I think everything they've done has worked pretty well. By the way, credit to Doc Rivers, picked up his 100th playoff win. You know, he takes some heat online from people for, look, he's blown some 3-1 leads in the playoffs, and there's times you can question his rotation. Guy's got 100 playoff wins. There's only 5 coaches now who have that. And he'll pass Larry Brown with the next win. And he's got a ring, by the way. Like, give the man some credit. He does know how to coach.
Last thing on the 76ers, we understand that Joel Embiid's playing at the MVP level. Do you think? I'm curious. Just me being curious. Do you think you look at Jokic, Giannis, Joel Embiid? Are you still going Giannis? Are you still going Joel? Just out of curiosity right now, I just need to know.
It's interesting because there's a reason the vote is turned in before the playoffs start, because you'd be rethinking it right now, wouldn't you? And a lot of it's the team stuff. Like, we've talked about Denver got Jokic kind of, I don't want to say contained, but limited his impact and nobody else has been able to step up. They haven't been able to contain Joel Embiid. They don't really have the people. But Maxey has stepped up. Harden's put up numbers. Like, his team has risen up around him in a better way. Giannis Antetokounmpo is still Giannis. So it would very possibly be a different race if you asked us to vote after the end of the first round, right? But that happens a lot. That happens in some years. So.
Yeah, it's almost like that. I know we have the Finals MVP, but sometimes I wish we had like a tournament, like the Final Four most outstanding player.
Yeah.
What NBA playoffs most outstanding player, just so we can kind of, I think it's another, just put some flowers out there for people who are playing well. Next up, Celtics, Nets. Now, this one was interesting. We have to start with Tatum's buzzer beater, don't we?
That was just first off, what an amazingly entertaining fun game. Like that is playoff basketball. That's why everybody didn't want to play Brooklyn in the first round, right? Like, Durant was 9 of 24, and they did as good a job as they were probably going to be able to do on him. And it still took a last second spinning bucket. Jayson Tatum made that look pretty easy. That's not an easy shot. And their ball movement, everybody in the building, frankly, everybody watching thought Smart was going to shoot that three. Put the ball watch two guys fly by, put the ball on the floor, found his man. Like, it was great playmaking, a great ending to a great game. I'm wondering, Corey, I'll ask you, did Brooklyn blow their chance to win one on the road? Was this, sometimes you don't get a lot of opportunities on the road to win one of those hard games. They almost had this one. Are they going to regret not getting this one?
It's the playoffs. You can't think about regret. It's one of those things where, as an athlete, you just got to wipe it and move on. And it comes down to, obviously, they could have come out with it. Tatum had to have, I don't want to say miraculous, but it was pretty wonderful play just to win, right? So it's almost like, okay, well, if I'm Brooklyn, I'm thinking this is one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference on one of the best tears in the league, right? Like, they're playing at this clip right now, and they had to beat on a buzzer beater. Like, that was basically our game to win. So in my mind, it's almost like, we got this. Like, we're in this. And Ben Simmons might be coming back soon. So it's kind of like, if I'm Brooklyn, I'm actually feeling probably pretty good right now, understanding the scenario. Remember, they had to play Cleveland in the play-in game to get this opportunity, right? So I don't think that's lost on people, especially when you think about the vitriol that Kyrie has experienced in Boston, plus just generally speaking, the expectations around the Nets organization the past few years when they had James Harden and Kyrie and KD. There's always this question of, like, when is it going to click? When is it going to strike? You guys got all the talent. And for them to come in seated so low, having to, like, fight in to get to this opportunity, I think it's not lost on them that they're like, hey, look, we belong here. We already knew that. I think KD understands that. Kyrie understands that. But for all the young guys who, don't have a lot of playoff experience, I think that's a pretty big confidence boost.
I think so. They got Claxton had a good game. They had good games from other role players who stepped up, which is one of the things they're going to need, because I still think Boston's advantage in this series, and I think we can see it in game 2, more pieces to adjust, more players. Udoka he misses Robert Williams, but I'm curious what they're going to do with Daniel Theis. Kyrie went after him for stretches, right? Like, just they went that's an isolation heavy team in Brooklyn, and they went at the weak points they could find. We'll see how that looks, how they hide that, how they can disguise that a little in game 2. I thought, frankly, one of the fun things of that game, Corey, was those teams looked like they knew each other, right? Like, that was not like Memphis, Minnesota. We're like, you know what? We're going to see some major shifts between game 1 and game 2. Same with New Orleans. Like, we can make some major changes here. It's going to throw everybody off. No. This was some pretty serious basketball. The teams that know how to adjust to each other. So I'm curious what adaptations the coaches make between 1 and 2. I just think Boston has more. They just got more depth, so they can try more things and go with some different looks. Then we'll see how that works. The other thing from Boston's perspective is they can't lose their head. And they started the fourth quarter. Remember, the fourth quarter, they were up double digits. I think it was a 17-2 run, 16-2 run by Brooklyn at the start of the start of the fourth quarter. And you saw the Celtics rush. You saw them like, man, I want to get it all back at once. I want to, you get down and you want to make the big play. They went, and with that rushing, they shot 2 of 7 at the rim to start the fourth quarter, and they missed some layups and some bunnies, and they got themselves in trouble. I think second game, again, emotions are high, but you come out in that second game a little more down, a little more composed, and you don't miss some of those. And I think that they can be better. I kind of still like Boston in this. I mean, they won game 1, but I still like Boston in this series, but it's a series, Corey.
Yeah.
It's a series.
It's funny you mentioned like the going back and forth. They know each other. My mind always just goes back to the Olympics, and just you hear all those great stories of like, good on good. You go to practice, and for the USA basketball team, practices are harder for them than the game. This is historically speaking. Obviously, the level of basketball internationally has risen dramatically since the old days. But still, who's been dominant on the world stage? USA basketball. So you think Durant versus Tatum. How many times have they seen that matchup state after practice in Tokyo? Think about that for a second. And we're seeing it play out in the course of a 7-game series, which I think is brilliant as a basketball fan. I'm like, this is USA basketball practice. We're watching it, because in the past you see like Magic and Larry and all those documentaries about the Dream Team. Like what was it like to be in a locked practice watching the '92 team practice? So this is kind of me as a fan, like living vicariously. If they make a documentary nowadays, it's like the rise of Jayson Tatum and Kevin Durant, like battling it out right in front of us. This is what it's like to be in a locked practice. But I think that the biggest thing to me that I think gives Brooklyn the edge on this, like I said, one, they have the confidence that they had to have a great game to beat us. And then two, we've already won championships individually. You think about KD and Kyrie, they already know what it feels like. And I think that's a really important thing because they already know the path, right? And Jayson Tatum doesn't know that yet. And I think that veteran experience of having like the leaders like on the team when everyone else clapped and saying, how do we get there? I know we haven't got there yet, fellas, but like I won. I know what it takes to get there. I know how to get there. I don't think that can ever be underscored. I don't think that can ever be just overlooked. And I think with the other side, they're trying to figure it out together. So there is this element of like youthful naivety in the sense of like, hey, I don't know. I guess let's just play it out and see what happens. We don't know. We don't know. So let's just go cut loose and have fun. But I like the whole steely, like veteran, like the whole Lions over there where Katie's like, look, guys, relax. It's a long series. It's a long playoffs. I know how to get there.
Yeah. How much do you think, look, Ben Simmons is reportedly getting closer to coming back. He's working out. We don't know when we're going to see him game 3, probably more like game 4 or 5. How much of a difference do you think that makes?
I'd be curious to see because knowing the Nets teams in the past, when you have superstars dropped in at random moments, it has not played out well. So that's kind of like most cases, I would say this is awesome. Yeah. But with this team and the history that we've seen in the past few years, I think it adds more problems than not, which is really hard for me to say. It's like when I told you before about the whole Philadelphia Nets trade. I was like, I don't know if either team really stands to win. I think the Bucks won, right? In this case, I think the Heat won. And if I want to revise that statement, but like in this scenario, if Ben Simmons comes back, talent-wise, clearly the Nets favor. But then just understanding that they also lost with James Harden, KD, and Kyrie. It's like, so that's really confusing to me. I think it's a negative over the long course of time necessarily with this organization that we've seen the lack of consistency.
I think it's hard to drop in any player, like you said, like a guy who's been out, by the way, all year. You have not played with him. And then this isn't Steph Curry. Like we kind of didn't know how to play with Steph Curry and we can bring him back and bring him off the bench and it's fine. This is a very different situation. They haven't played with him. And Simmons is a unique player. We'll put it that way. Like he is not a shooter. He does bring you speed and he moves the ball. He is the kind of on-ball defender they could use. But how much, after missing a year, what version of Simmons are you getting? Imagine he comes off the bench. How does he fit that role? And that's not getting into, there's a lot of pressure. Like he did not necessarily deal with pressure.
You think about unique players. Russell Westbrook with Lakers is a great example. Former MVP who's a unique player, triple-double machine. And it took them, he played like 79 games. They couldn't figure it out.
Yeah.
And so just think about that as a case study. I think the most, like I said, in this organization, the most recent comp is James Harden got traded, right? Like mid-season. And then we saw, okay, well, with this new like element. They play together in like all-star games and stuff. Like what's going to happen? And they weren't able to convert. They were able to go off of raw talent for a while, but it just fell apart. So that's probably the closest comp. You get traded mid-season, but as you mentioned, I mean, you haven't played in a year. So in my mind, this creates more problems for a team that has struggled with inconsistency, not just this season, but in the past seasons, really since Kyrie got there, right? With all the injuries that all their stars have had. So for me, what the Nets need, it's kind of funny. You always need more talent, but I think the number one thing the Nets need is stability. Like, can we just get everyone on the court at the same time for more than 20 odd games or whatever it might be? Like, can Kyrie play in home games? Can all these things that the Nets deal with, it all centers around this idea of stability.